Now, I don't want to talk about women in the Muslim community only from the perspective of victimhood or being, oppressed. This is a small part of our community, but because it's so serious, it needs attention. But this is not all that women are in our community. Women are believers in the community like men. And if we don't understand that women are necessary to the progress of our community, to the success of our community, then we don't understand the Quran. When we look at how women are described in the Quran, we see that women, like men, can be good, they can be bad. Look at the individual women who are in the Quran. There are women who are sinful and who disobey Allah, like the wife of Lut, or the wife of Nuh, alayhim as-salam. So these are disobedient women, sinful women, like the Quran has sinful men. Abu Lahab, for example, and his wife is a sinner as well. There are also righteous and pious women, like Sayyidina Maryam, the mother of Isa, alayhi as-salam. We have the wife of Fir'aun, who, despite the fact that her husband was the Akbar Zalim, the biggest oppressor, in the Quran, he is the example of the tyrant in the Quran. She was a righteous woman. One of the things that shows us is that a woman's religiosity, her taqwa, her piety is not tied to her husband. She could have the best husband. Indeed, she could have a prophet as a husband, and she could be sinful. She could have the worst husband. Indeed, she could have the biggest tyrant, Fir'aun, as her husband, and she could be pious. Women are individuals whose own souls will be judged according to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, according to their own struggle and their own effort to reach Allah. And this is the most liberating and beautiful message of the Quran. This is truly where Islam liberates women. Forget about the social practices or cultural practices. Those are inferior and far secondary to this theological message. This message that you, as a woman, are an individual soul, and that your salvation is not tied to your husband. SubhanAllah, there's no message more revolutionary for women than that. But women and men also are together, women and men, especially as husband and wife, are the fundamental social unit. In any society, that is the core unit upon which a society is built. And what we have to understand is that the Quranic message says that it is only if men and women work together that a society will be successful. And men and women working together can make a society a disaster. To me, one of the most telling and important passages of the Quran in this respect comes from Surah Tawbah. And this is verse 67, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and listen to this, and then I'll translate it into English. Munafiqun are hypocrites, right? Al-munafiquna wal-munafiqat, the male hypocrites and the female hypocrites. Ba'aduhum min ba'ad. They are of one another. يأمرون بالمنكر وينهون عن المعروف ويقبضون أيديهم. So the hypocritical men and women, they're together. They are working together to create evil and to stop good from happening. Have you seen that? Have you seen that in our time, any of you? We can see it. One of the most famous women, I won't say her name, but popular women who attacks Islam, who used to live in the Netherlands, is married to one of the most famous men, a British man, historian, who attacks Islam. She goes on TV and does it, and he does it through academia. They're married, partners in this. Believe me, and you can witness this with your own eyes. Men and women who are opposed to Islam are working very hard and very successfully and very efficiently together to attack us. They're working together. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says, وَالْمُؤْمِنُونَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتُ بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ يَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ. Okay? So the believing men and the believing women, in contrast, are partners of one another. What is walaya? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran uses this term awliya. A wali is the closest relationship. It is beyond friendship. It is not blood relations. It is a relationship of absolute trust and dependence. When you're in a relationship of walaya, you can depend on that person for anything. That person will help you and support you and protect you in anything. It is the closest relationship. It is how believers are supposed to be towards one another. But more than that, it's how believing men and believing women are supposed to be to one another. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues. So together, the believing men and women are partners with one another, enjoining the good and forbidding evil. وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ. Iqama salah means not just to pray together, it means to establish prayer. We establish together prayer, right? Which means establishing masajid and the institutions for that. وَيُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ. So we give zakat, but also again in a collective way. وَيُطِيعُونَ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ. So we obey Allah and His Messenger. And then this is an amazing way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ends this verse. سَيَرْحَمْهُمُ اللَّهُ. These are the people that Allah will have mercy on. Do we need Allah's mercy? Are we a community that is in need of mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? I think. Do we? We need this. The mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is coming on us when we work together. We work together to enjoin the good, forbid the evil, to establish prayer, to establish collection distribution of zakat, to do what is right and to do what is wrong. If we do not find a way of working together, men and women, believing men and believing women, al-mu'minun wal-mu'minat, if we cannot find a way to work together, we will not be successful. Because the munafiqun wal munafiqat, they're working together very hard. So when we talk about women and Islam, we're not just talking about, poor women are victims, we have to help them. No, we're talking about how are we successful? How do we do things in a way that are helpful? And here, I think, perhaps the biggest obstacle is that we really don't understand the concept of shura. The real problem is the process of decision making in our community. To believe that men can make the decisions in the community on behalf of everyone is like saying, well, we can just have the black people make all the decisions on behalf of the white people, or the white people on behalf of the black people. Or if we have a community in Poland, we'll just have the Arab Muslims make all the decisions, and Polish people, don't worry, we'll make the decisions for you. We have ikhlas, we have good intentions, we can decide everything. What is the reason for shura? Is shura just to be fair, just to give the appearance of fairness? No. Shura, or consultation, is a way of gathering knowledge, a way of understanding what's happening in the community, of understanding the needs of a community, and bringing in the multiple perspectives, experience, and wisdom of people from all different angles. Someone who is a professional, who is a doctor, has a different perspective on society than someone who is a taxi driver. They also have different needs. Maybe the physician, on Fridays, he can take Friday afternoons off. He can control his schedule. He tells his secretary, he tells him at the hospital, I'm going to take every Friday afternoon off. So he goes to Jummah, he can listen to a very long khutbah, sit there, enjoy himself, talk to people. The taxi driver, he's paid for his license. He has to get back to work in 30 minutes. He doesn't have this advantage. So if we're talking about what time Jummah should be and discussing with the khatib how long the khutbah should be, do you not need to include both people to understand what the needs of the community are? Similarly, this is why you can't just have no women in the shura, or one woman as we say a token woman. We need to have accurate representation and reflection of all of the people in the community. Otherwise, we won't be fair, and we won't have, beyond fairness, we won't have successful and effective programs. I go to Islamic centers, and sometimes I'll have the people say to me, we tried very hard to have this program, and not many people showed up. I don't know what's wrong with people. And I ask them, well, who did you consult about the topic, about the time, about the speaker? And they might say, oh, well, I know this person, he's good, and this is a good time for us. But then when you check with the community, you find out it's the worst time. Maybe that's the time when the kids need to do their homework. That's why there's no women coming, not because they're lazy or they don't care, or they'd love to come, but that's not the good time. Did you ask them? Did you consult with them? Not did you consult with your wife. The wife of the imam is not the representative of the women of the community. She's biased. She's your wife. And she also has a different lifestyle. She's the lifestyle of the wife of the imam lifestyle. You need to talk to other people. So shura and consultation is so important for success. One of the things that I think in terms of giving us an obstacle for truly succeeding is our misunderstanding about what the Quran and the Sunnah say about women and men and women and our relationship together. And here it's going to be a little bit complicated, but I know you're all intelligent people and can follow me, and I'm hoping that I'm speaking a little bit slowly so the translators have time to translate as well. Muslims always say that Islam liberated women, and we compare the situation of women in Jahiliyyah with what the Quran said about women. Before Islam, women did not have any right to inheritance. After Islam, they had a right for inheritance. Before Islam, female infanticide, burying baby girls alive, was practiced. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbid this in the Quran. It was banned in Islam. These are improvements, of course, great improvements. And we know there are many others. One of the problems is that the way some of us have learned to understand the Quran and the Sunnah is that we stop there. We stop only on the improvements that happened from the early 7th century or before Islam to right after Islam. And we look at these teachings only as they are, as specific teachings, without looking at the values underlying these teachings. We have to look at what is the principle and what is the value and how is the Quran, what is the direction that the Quran is moving us in. And I think the best way to understand this, I want to make a comparison first and then give specific examples in the Quran of how, that should let us think a little bit about how we understand these things, is slavery. Now, the Quran does not forbid slavery. The Sunnah, the Prophet Muhammad, he never abolished slavery. Why is that? In that time, it was impossible to make slavery illegal. Enslavement was a result of warfare. In that time, there was not the technology to have prisoner of war camps. Think about World War I and World War II. It was only really at the end, before World War I and World War II, at the end of the 19th century was the first time that there were large prisoner of war camps, where the enemy was held in a camp until the war was over, and then there was an exchange or release of prisoners. Why was it only possible during that time? It was possible because by that time, with the invention of the steam engine and other also public health measures, it was possible to contain hundreds, even thousands of people in a camp and keep them alive. Before that time, it was impossible. If you had more than 100 people, they would starve to death and die. There was no way of bringing what they needed to keep them alive. And so slavery was a consequence of being a captive of war. If slavery had been banned, those prisoners of war would have been executed. There was no other way of dealing with it. You cannot release 1,000 enemy soldiers right after the battle. They're going to come back and kill you and harm you. So slavery was part of it. But was slavery ever considered a good thing? No, it was always considered a bad thing. Our ulama always said that the original condition of any human being is freedom. That's why if a child is found in the street, in fiqh it's called a laqid, a foundling or a child that's found in the street, their status was always free. No one could take that child as a slave and say, I'm going to take this child and make them my slave. In Sharia, in other laws it was allowed. Roman law, yes. You could take a child, an orphan child or a child that's left in the street, make that child your slave. In Sharia, no. Because freedom is the original condition of people. The Quran again and again and again encourages believers to free slaves if they know that they won't cause damage to society. And it is it is kafara, it is expiation for sins to free slaves. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, anytime he saw someone mistreating a slave, he rebuked them and told them to free that slave. So one time a young man came to him and said, we have a slave woman in our family. My father brought her because our mother died and she raised all of us. I got angry at her and slapped her on the face. What should I do? He said, free her. free her. So any abuse or mistreatment was not allowed. Because of all of this, in the 19th century, our ulama throughout the Muslim world, beginning in Tunis, they said that now is the time to abolish slavery. They made slavery illegal forever after. They said it is no longer necessary in society. It is no longer, we don't need to resort to slavery in order to contain the captives of war. There are so many harms that are occurring in the slave trade, so much abuse that's occurring. And we can declare from a Shari'i point of view that it is now forbidden. Absolutely forbidden. Even though the Quran permits it. Still, it is in Sharia to make it forbidden, illegal, from this point is no longer allowed. So we see that there's a goal, there's a maqsad that the Quran has about slavery. And we need to understand that it is the same thing with women. That there was only so much that could be done for women in the 7th century. This was a very basic society, tribal society, very limited state mechanisms. People relied on their tribe, on their family. And so the progress that was made for women was great, but still limited when we compare with today. The ability today for safety, to travel safely, to live a long, healthy life, to be able to get an education in a safe environment. We have many benefits because of the development of technology and science and the political and social institutions in a place. So when we look at Muslim women, we need to understand that the Quran and the Sunnah is operating on two levels. On one level, giving the people of that time, of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, of his community, regulations to limit their abuse of women and to promote women's development in that society and their respect and dignity. But there were limitations on what could be done in that society. So we have to also look at the goal that is very clear. It's very clear that one of the goals that we see in the Sunnah and the Quran is to make women more capable of being full and complete and responsible human beings, to make them independent, not dependent. Any restriction that's placed on women that involves her dependence was a necessary social restriction in that context for her protection. But the goal of Islam and the goal of any rule in Sharia that restricts women is not to make her dependent. And if it's possible for her to be safe from harm in another way, then the goal is safety, not dependence. You see the difference between safety and dependence. And this is why, let's give an example of travel, for example. We know that there's specific teaching about a woman not traveling without a mahram. Now, in any society where there's very, very limited police, the roads are, if you think about the roads in 7th century Arabia and even many centuries after, it's very dangerous, even for a single person, even for a group of men to travel on a road. So for a woman to be required to travel with a mahram, by the way, there's also a hadith that a man should never travel alone, that he should travel in a minimum of three people, was a way to protect her. It was not a way to force her into dependence. And that is why the majority of ulama, even the Saudi ulama, said that In a modern society where there's safer modes of transportation, where there is more police protection, border protection, all of these things, that, for example, a woman who can travel with another group of women for Hajj, or for Umrah, or for some important purpose like education and Islamic knowledge. So are they rejecting the Sunnah? No, because the Sunnah is not a specific restriction. The Sunnah is the reason for that ruling. So the reason for assigning a mahram for a woman in travel is her protection, not her dependence. And so if there are other means for her to be safe in travel, then they are permitted by the Sunnah. They meet the goal of the Sunnah. And this is the maqsad of the goal of the Quran and Sunnah. And there are many other examples. Well, I have many more examples, but I'm supposed to end. Should I take some questions? Do we have time? Yes? Yeah? You think we have time for a few questions?